So we have three amazing guests today. And before I jump in, I'm going to give you guys a little overview about AngelCon. What is AngelCon? Our three guests were winners of AngelCon this year. So AngelCon is a program we run every year. This year is our 7th year. We seek potential investors out in the community, and we encourage them to participate in this fund. Each investor writes a $6,000 check to purchase a unit in an LLC that we set up each year. Each year it's a new LLC. We try to gather a minimum of 20 investors, and some years we've had up to 28, 30 investors. So every year is a little different. They pool all this money into this one fund. So we raise a minimum of $100,000, which we did the first year, and every year it's gone up since. So last year we raised a total of 140. The year before was, I think, 205. So each year is a little different, but then the investors, so we meet once a month with them. And these are investors who've maybe not frequently invested in startups or maybe have never invested in startups, but they're accredited and they want to learn more. So we invite guest speakers who come in, lots of experts from the Bay Area who come and talk about, deal terms, cap tables, how do we review the pitch deck of a startup, what's important, what do we need to look for to make the best decision as far as whether or not we want to invest in that startup. So we do that for about 6 months. We train them how to do due diligence on the startups. Then come January, the startups start applying to be considered for that chunk of money. The investors vote, pick their top 12, and then they narrow it down to their top 6. And then we have a big event come May or June at Slow Brew, The Rock. The startups pitch on a stage, kind of like Shark Tank, and the investors select the winning startup. So sometimes they'll divvy the pot, which is what happened last year. They'll give a certain amount to one startup and another.
Invest. I just want to be clear, it's an investment.
It is an investment. That's
important.
Thank you. Very important. So they are investing in these startups for equity, or what will become equity. There's a potential for return on their investment, the ROI. When and if, and that happens typically, so sometimes the company goes public eventually, so they do an IPO, then everyone's very happy, or they get acquired, which is the more typical route. They'll get acquired by a larger company, maybe in 5, 7, 10 years. The average is about 7 or 8 years to see what we call an exit. So that's kind of it. So the three speakers we have here today. So welcome Emily and Alec and Andrew. Alec, good to see you. And we also have Emily on the call. So the winner of AngelCon 2023 was Emily with her startup Ryde, and Alec was a runner-up. Emily was awarded $100,000, Alec $40,000, and Andrew was our Audience Choice Award. Audience selected Andrew as a winner. So the audience gets to, there's about 200, 300 people that show up.
Event.
Yeah, thank you.
Really, really well done. Yeah.
Thank you. And they get to vote and pick their winner. What's interesting is in the top 6, what we've seen every year is sometimes the investors will get together and do additional investments on the side in another one of the top 6 companies. We work with these 6 companies for years. So it's not like, oh, AngelCon done. We continue to support them. The companies here are all in our incubator program. So they're with us for a certain period of time. Some of our successes right now that we've been tracking, there's a company from year 1 that was in the top 6, Mason. They just closed a round about a year ago. They raised another $12 million. So sometimes we see these startups, they're at the very start of their journey, and 5, 6 years later, it's like, bam, things start snowballing. So what's interesting here today is Emily is going to tell us her story. They had a very interesting startup. They won AngelCon, lots of great traction. But then things took a different turn, a very unexpected turn, which we can talk about. Lots of learnings from that. But before we jump in, I'd love for each of you to talk about your startup. Like what was it that you were doing, that you are still doing, because Emily's going to explain what happened there. But let's start with Emily, and then we'll go to Alec and then Andrew. So Emily, great to see you. Tell us about Ryde and what the company did.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Judy. So my name is Emily Gavrilenko, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Ryde, where we were connecting college students for long-distance travel. So let's say someone wants to go from San Luis Obispo to San Francisco. We matched riders and drivers, let them split the cost of gas. And during the journey, we got about 20% of Cal Poly signed up and facilitated thousands of rides. So definitely a very great fun time. And AngelCon helped make it all happen. We're a part of it. It was a part of our journey.
Part of the journey. Then we'll hear the rest in a minute, but thanks, Emily. And Alec, before we jump to you, I also need to take just a second to acknowledge what's going on here. Alec arrived in Israel the day before basically before the war broke out. And I just, I want to acknowledge that our hearts go out to every human out there that is suffering from what's going on in Israel and Palestine. And I know you're doing a lot to try and support efforts there. So thank you for all that you're doing. And I'm sorry, deeply sorry that you're in the middle of all this right now, and for what's going on. So our hearts go out to you and all the people affected by what's happening right now.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's there's no words really. And I'm sure you've heard this, but we all know someone who's either murdered or kidnapped at this point. So never in our wildest dreams. So thank you for that. In terms of demo, we are like Dropbox for music creators. And you could also liken it to GitHub for music creators. So if you're not familiar with GitHub, it has very important features like version control. You can add commenting on those specific versions. And basically the value add is we save hours of time for music creators. And traditional platforms like Google Drive and Dropbox don't have these necessary features. So the implications are music creators have to spend hours of wasted time organizing and managing their files.
And we're talking about pretty large producers. Like these are, this affects producers at every level of the industry. It's not just, hobby, people who are doing this for fun on the side. Like, this is an industry issue across the board, right? Yeah. And you have, the reason you were in Israel is you have some of your team is out there. Is that right?
That's right. Israel and Ukraine, same time zone. So
yeah,
that's why I came out here. Not the best timing on my part, but
yeah. Well, thanks for making the time this morning. We were super glad to see you, and thanks for being here this morning. Yeah. Andrew.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, stay safe over there, Alec. Man, yeah, crazy time that hit me. I'm Andrew DeMille, and for today, I'm co-founder of Quantum Energy, and we're bringing new data-driven insights to energy decision makers that help them to make decisions that have good financial outcomes while also prioritizing for the health of you, me, our children, and our planet. So it's our product's called Total View Energy Platform, and it does energy system modeling to understand what emissions are avoided because of large-scale renewable projects. There's a great variance when it comes to the impact potential of these projects. It's not just go deploy more renewables. The answer is not that simple, and it's becoming increasingly clear that there's a need for this type of data that actually accounts for emissions reductions, and then how that translates into public health and ecosystem quality benefits. So that's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So jumping right in, let's kind of focus on AngelCon and the event. And So, Emily, I mean, all of you, anyone just jump in, like how far along were you? Because sometimes to try and help startups understand what's kind of the timing, and also because you were all on that journey of fundraising, you still are. Looking back, where were you at when you applied? Where were you at by the time we got to the event? How do you feel looking back as to, okay, yes, it was a little early, but we still made it. We did need more validation. We were able to get that or not. Did we have product market fit? I mean, it's kind of touched on all those points as far as your startup, where you were at, and how it related to your um, journey with AngelCon.
Yeah, so we were kind of at the cusp of things starting to happen. So we had launched our product that previous October, and for reference, we applied to AngelCon in March, got into the program. So through the month of April, we had our pitch boot camps, and then in May we got selected to top 6. We had due diligence, and then in June that was the actual AngelCon competition. And so back in March, we actually, right in the end of February, we started to see like a peak where we had a bunch of users starting to sign up. We were doubling month over month. So it was at the point where we're like, okay, we built something, we think it's working. Now let's see let's keep growing it and try to start fundraising in the meantime, because it was always our goal to start expanding to new universities in the fall. So it kind of lined up at this cusp of, we've kind of proven people are willing to use it. We know we're going to keep going further down that route, and we want to apply. Our business is a bit different because it's a software business. So it makes sense to build it first, get it out into the world, and have people start using it. But for reference, like the previous year, Novocuff did it, and they were a medical devices company. So completely different for them. They needed the money to build their product. So there's kind of 2 different stages to apply. I'd say the previous year we were in the summer accelerator program, and we also had a pitch. And at that point, we were just pitching an idea. And so going into AngelCon, actually having metrics to show and a product built was a whole different pitch. And AngelCon was really helpful to kind of talk about the differences in those 2 different stages of the business. So for us, it was at a time when we were starting to think about fundraising. We thought even if we didn't make it to the finals, that pitch boot camp would be like extremely valuable. And so definitely great opportunity just to apply no matter what stage you're at.
Oh, thank you for that. But that's a great explanation of the phases, the comparison between demo day at the end of the accelerator, explaining the idea in a more beefed out format versus actually having some validation. Yeah. What about you, Alec? Did you feel the timing was right for demo, and because you went through a few pivots before getting to AngelCon?
Yeah. Now that I'm just realizing this, we actually applied with our original idea. So the initial application was not what I just explained to you guys.
That's right.
Originally, the company was a blockchain marketplace for music licensing. And our beta users basically told us, this is great, but here's the problem that is a real problem for us. So I applied to AngelCon with that idea. And then I want to say a few weeks later, we made that pivot. So that's how early.
Actually, it's so funny that you say that, because I'm remembering now conversations with investors where there's a whole group that were like, we don't understand blockchain and NFTs. There's no way, like, this, but you piqued everyone's curiosity. And I think the reason you made it through is more because they wanted to learn more about blockchain and NFTs. They're like, well, at least we get to talk to Alec and find out more about what this is all about. So that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So if there's a takeaway, if you think you're too early, just apply anyway.
But then the pivot is where you started seeing the product market fit for what people were ready to connect with in the market. So that was an important part of your journey. Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard people say product market fit is more of a feeling. I can kind of relate to that now. There's just more urgency from customers to start using your product.
Right.
And that's the feeling you get.
Right. Where if you're struggling to try and pitch your idea, and if you're struggling for people to understand what you're doing versus you create something and everyone wants it, then you're like, okay, I'm onto the right thing here. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. What about you, Andrew?
So heading into AngelCon, it was myself and my co-founder, Dr. Daniel Howard, and we'd done a number of case studies using the TotalView platform, but we didn't really have our full team together. So that was heading into AngelCon, but we had some really meaningful traction in the market. So interest and work with some large consultancies that advise on energy decisions. We had some work with a large corporate buyer that might be doing the internet here right now. So we had some good traction heading into it.
But hey, let's clarify the traction, because it was interest. Like you had letters of interest, memorandums of understanding. There's no done deal, signed contracts, but you felt that you were really close to.
We had one, but it was a battery startup company, and we had one paying customer and a lot of stuff that was interest, and it was moving along. Interest potential from the National Science Foundation, interest potential from Electric Power Research Institute, et cetera, et cetera. And so some of that's materialized since then.
Right.
But yeah, so
I think a lot of what's interesting is, even if you can showcase that there's a little bit of traction with just interest, with LOIs and so on, that's actually holds a lot of value. And the investors, I remember we talked a lot about, well, what if? Oh, wow, this could be big. What if, so that definitely piques
we
their.
do a lot of that. You gotta do lots of what ifs, and then hopefully something hits.
Yeah. No, that's good. So any one of you jump in on this next one. How did you prepare to pitch? Not so much in giving the pitch, but as far as building the content and figuring out, as you're building this pitch, realizing, oh, I have a gap here, a business gap, like that I need to, were there any light bulb moments where you're like, yeah, I need to address this, and then preparing this pitch and realizing there's a gap here that I need to work on for the business? Did you have any of those light bulb moments as you were prepping and trying to get ready for the event?
I'll speak to it. Yeah. So one of the biggest challenges has been just making it simple to understand what it is that we're doing. And so we worked on this analogy that seemed to really help people to grasp it. And basically imagine if you're trying to make healthy decisions about food and manage your diet, but all you have is how much does the food cost and the calories. Now, you don't know about the proteins, the fats, the added sugars, the impacts the food is going to have on your body. And a similar situation and problem is being faced by the global power or energy industry, where we're literally throwing trillions of dollars into clean energy. And yet it's basically based predominantly on how much does the energy cost and carbon emissions alone. What about air pollution? What about water pollution? What about all these hundreds of other pollutants that happen? Does that weigh into decision-making, the impacts the energy is going to have on us? Well, the answer is absolutely yes, but energy needs a nutrition label. And so that was helpful to go, oh, okay, I kind of get it. Yeah, that does make sense. And it should have a nutrition label.
During that process of prepping, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the nutrition label
in the boot camp.
concept in the boot camp.
Yeah. So it's been very helpful to just get people to kind of at least conceptually grasp what it is that we're talking about. That totally makes sense. There are impacts when it comes to food, and there are impacts when it comes to energy. And it's the current situation is incomplete, it's outdated, and it terribly needs an upgrade. And so that's what we're doing.
And we often recommend that to startups. It's you'll hear startups saying, we're the Uber of blah blah blah, or we're the Airbnb of blah blah blah. So we're the nutritional label of clean energy. Yeah, it's super helpful when you're doing something very innovative, so then people can start drawing the parallels. Yeah,
that was a big breakthrough.
Yeah,
just have something simple like that.
What about Alec, Emily, any breakthroughs during that pitch prep boot camp phase and that came up as you were trying to get ready to pitch the investors?
I can hop in. One of the things you have to do is make a P&L. And I think we would all say I think we would all agree we were too early to do that. But the point is, it forces you to think a few steps ahead, because while it is too early to make an accurate one, it's not too early to make a hypothetical one and start to understand, well, okay, if I have these many customers and it costs this much, then this is a realistic amount of money I can make. So, oh, wait, maybe I shouldn't go splurge and hire all these extra people. Maybe one will do the job and we'll reach profitability 2 years quicker, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. So working on projections, even if your projections they're going to change over time, there's no doubt, but helping you materialize what it might look like. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, just financials. No one on my team really had a background in finance. We had no idea. We just wanted to build this cool company, this product. And so really taking a step back and being like, okay, well, let's figure out the financial feasibility of it. Met with like some SBDC mentors, and we're able to really get some help on figuring out what it actually costs to run our business, and then actually extrapolate away the time aspect. Because yeah, sure, the three of us had two co-founders. We could put in a bunch of hours, but okay, how do we actually change that into costs as well as we start to think about scaling and hiring other people to do the work we were doing?
Right. I think that's a big switch from demo day to pitching to real investors is thinking about the revenue model, like really getting into the weeds on that and the business model itself. What does that look like? Yeah. Any other takeaways from that pitch prep phase of?
I would just say that the practice, just the repetitions, and then having, not everybody had relevant expertise, and that's, unrealistic to expect that everybody's gonna have expertise in each given industry. But everybody there was
You mean
very,
the consultants
yeah,
that giving you feedback?
exactly. But everybody there is brilliant in their own right, and so they all have valid and really helpful feedback. And so you go through all these repetitions of presenting the pitch and listening, and you don't take and implement everything, otherwise you'd just be doing a tailspin. But the point is that through the course of that boot camp, there very much became, these kind of golden threads throughout, like, okay, this person's got lost here. Okay, clearly there's an opportunity to improve. And so it was really helpful to have that opportunity to talk to so many folks who are very skilled and experts in their own domains, and kind of glean that feedback, distill it down and go, okay, what's here for me to implement and do that. And so that was super helpful.
So maybe I can explain the bootcamp process real quick. So once the startups have applied, the top 12, what I saw the first couple of years was we had a lot of outside applicants that weren't quite as ready. Like the teams in the incubator program, we do a lot of work on pitching. There's a lot of opportunity to meet with experts on that and get consulting on that. But there's a lot of outside teams where their pitches were, complete mess. So the idea was, well, this isn't really fair. So let's level the playing field. So I think it was like year 2 or 3, we created this boot camp. And we said all 12, whether or not they're in our program, we're going to put them through boot camp for 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever it was. And there's a session where we help, okay, let's break down the pitch to the bare bones, like what does it need to look like? Then work on that. And then we have these sessions with, a dozen consultants where they speed pitch. So every 20 minutes, so 10 minutes of pitching, 10 minutes of feedback. Next consultant, 10 minutes of pitching, 10 minutes of feedback. Next consultant. So they do that at least 6 times. Or I think at least 3 or 4 times the first session.
It was all blur looking back. There's a lot.
There's a lot. Great. Overall, I think I counted once, but it's close to 50 times of pitching. 50, and so we do, and then they gather all the feedback. They find those golden threads, and the idea is you're going to have this pattern recognition of like, okay, I keep hearing this. There's a problem here. I need to work on this. Work on the pitch, have a week, refine, come back, do it again. Work on the pitch, refine, come back, do it again. So that's kind of the concept behind bootcamp, the bootcamp that everyone's referring to. And by the way, if anyone has questions, please jump in, ask your questions. We want everyone to be able to ask as many questions as possible. Anything else for you, Emily and Alec,
Yeah, I think just constantly pitching. One makes you comfortable with the pitch. So at first you're like, get worried, like, oh man, how am I gonna get through this like presentation? And by the end, it's just second nature. and kind of like, yeah, just having the opportunity to hear from a bunch of different people. Like some are really interested. They're like, oh, I may not understand your problem. Some might be like, oh, I want to see your expenses. Like you don't have an expense sheet. So everyone comes for them from their unique backgrounds. So it's cool to hear all those like different inputs. One thing I wanted to note, like in the middle, there's like a huge session where everyone listens to the pitch, and then you come back with a score. And it kind of, you sit down with one of like the expert advisors, and they kind of give you feedback on each area, like problem, solution, team. And I thought that was really interesting to kind of have a analytical approach to the pitch and kind of hear it compared to others. Besides like one-off feedback, just kind of having a holistic view on things to work on as well.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do that as well. We use a software to rate the pitch as well. So, and then a report comes out, and then we analyze the strengths and weaknesses that got highlighted in the report. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I forgot that we did that too. Yeah, and she's like having PTSD here.
No.
Alec, what about you? Anything else? Any other best practices that came out of it that you would like to share?
For me personally, it helped me just narrow down the core message. I
Right.
think when you're in build mode, you're too in the weeds. So having a million people dissect your pitch helps get to the essence of it,
Right.
which helps pitch to investors, obviously, but also customers.
Right. That's a really important point, is just getting to the core of what you're doing without getting lost in all the features, and especially in companies like yours, Andrew and Alec, where it can become feature crazy. And so how do you clarify the message and make it understandable? Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Okay, so we're 4 months later, 4 or 5 months later. Well, let's talk about what happened. So we'll start with Emily, and Emily, thank you so much, because this is an exercise I think we don't do often enough. Is we love to highlight the major success stories, and we hyper focus on that. And so everyone thinks building a startup is easy and it's fun and it just happens like that. But no, like things happen. And so Emily, thank you for being here and wanting to share what happened and the learnings from that. So 4 months later, tell us what happened with Ryde.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of going into applying for AngelCon and talking to investors, one key thing we knew we needed, and just from feedback, is figuring out the liability and insurance side of things. And that's something in the early days where like we don't even have a business. There's no point in insuring something we don't have. But as we started to get more serious and think about scaling, we knew that's something we needed to look into long term. So we started conversations to kind of get a cost back in March. And it took us months and months and months to actually get an answer, and actually didn't have it before AngelCon. And so over summer, we were preparing to expand to a new university in the fall, UC Santa Barbara. We were recruiting, we were going full force. But then as we started doing it, we started to really sit and think like, okay, before we start spending investor money, before we start taking more time out of our lives, let's really have these serious discussions of, is this the right decision for the three of us? And right around that time, we also had the insurance quote, and it came back to be astronomically expensive. It was over 15 times what we were making per ride. So we'd either have to dramatically increase costs, making initially people could get to Los Angeles, San Francisco, hundreds of miles for $20 to $30. And this, if we wanted to not have extreme expenses, we'd have to raise prices to over 100. And so that kind of broke the core value we had for ourselves and our users. We wanted to build an affordable travel because that's something that we really wanted ourselves. And that started to seem less and less of a possibility. And also the future of the business, when in the beginning it was building something cool for our peers, it kind of turned into something like, okay, we have to deal with lawyers. And it seemed like it was less of what we were passionate about, which was really building something cool, going into, let's figure out how to do this legally. And so the three of us really sat down and talked about, is this where we want to spend the rest of our, like many, many years of our lives with? And are we comfortable spending investor money, are we confident we can make a return on investment? And after a lot of thought, we decided ultimately the answer was no. And so we returned the money, we shut down our business, we informed all our users, and now I started a new job. Johnny is just started a new job 2 days ago. And then my third co-founder, Josh, he's back in school for his senior year.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing all that. And I just also want to highlight your the value of your ethics around that, because the company, they didn't have to return the money. It's a high risk investment, and we tell our investors this is super high risk. One of our very first companies, Fund One, the winners, they dissolved it in 6 months. So it happened really fast, and the money was gone. So, the Ryde team, I just want to really underscore how phenomenal it is, and it's so great for your personal reputations too, because I have a feeling there is going to be another startup in your life. Being able to go back to investors and say, okay, you believed in us. Because the investors do, something I want to highlight is they're betting on the jockeys. They're looking at the founding team first. And if it's a strong team, they believe in the team, that's what they're putting their money on. They know the product or service is going to change. It already has for all of you. It did change over time, and they know it's going to keep changing. So they're not betting on the product or service. I mean, of course, there's a connection there too, but maintaining that stellar reputation with your investors and having that, making that very ethical decision to give the money back was really astounding, and very the investors were very impressed that you guys did that. So thank you again.
Yeah, well, the three of us, we love entrepreneurship, and we're very hungry to get back into it. I think all of us want to gain more experience. So that's kind of where we're at. Let's build up our skill set, our network. So when we go for round 2, we can come back swinging. So.
And I'll share a piece of data. And so there is a lot of data that shows there's a much higher success rate in startups that are started by founders, co-founders in their 40s. And actually the sweet spot is like somewhere between 40 and 45, have the highest success rate of any other age group. So FYI, it's a long journey, lots of opportunities.
I just want to commend Emily and the Ryde team for making that hard decision. Because, you got to have this kind of unwavering faith that you're going to make it happen somehow. And then there's this level of practicality, and you had to look at that really hard, right in the face of, oh my goodness, we have to have liability, and breaks the model, and you probably could have kept pushing on it and whatever else, but just, I commend you for making that hard decision. And it was, stings, and it's awesome because now you're freed up to do whatever it is that you want to do next. And so I'm happy for you. And yeah,
it's incredibly
right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's that whole loss aversion, right? It's you put so much time, energy into something, and then and that is a big mistake that people often make. Co-founders, founders is, okay, we've already put this much in, we got to keep going, and having the wherewithal to make that analysis is amazing. Yeah. Alec, what about you? So 4 or 5 months later, where are you at with the business? And what's been the progress up until now?
Yeah, so when we applied, there wasn't any product yet. We since launched our beta and onboarded just about 50 users. And now we are going from MVP to P. If you don't know, MVP is minimal viable product, which is the core value proposition, and it usually doesn't look good. It's not something that'll scale. It's just the purpose of it is to validate your assumptions, and we feel like a lot of our assumptions have been validated. So now we're building the thing that will scale. And for us, it's challenging because it has to be first above a certain threshold, that is Dropbox and Google Drive. Dropbox is a $10 billion company, so figuring out how to recreate some of their features with the resources we have, and then going above that and taking it to the next level so that it can be the time saver that we're advertising it to be. It's proving challenging, but we're doing it. So
Yeah.
the plan for us is to keep onboarding cautiously and slowly with the goal of learning from each person's feedback. Whereas if we just go crazy and onboard everyone from our wait list, we lose the intimacy. We can't get high quality feedback. So that's where we're at now.
Thank you. Thanks, Alec. Yeah, no, it's great. It's exciting. Yeah.
One other thing I'll add, we got another $30,000 investment. It wasn't directly through AngelCon, but I am 99% sure that getting runner up in AngelCon won him over.
Nice.
So
Congratulations.
AngelCon, thank you. Yeah, AngelCon can have rippling effects.
Thank you. That's awesome. Good job. That's great
awesome.
news. Congratulations. So Andrew too, what was really interesting is a lot of the what ifs actually materialize like literally within a month, right?
Yeah, in the last, I mean, since then,
Yes,
I'm
since
not
Angel
perfect at keeping track of time. So
Well, right
I
after
was so
AngelCon,
impressed
like
with Emily. She's like, oh yeah, this month was the boot camp, and this month I'm going, wow.
well, to
You
be fair,
remember.
you've had a baby.
That's true. That's true.
So
Yeah.
there's a bit of baby brain for a
For
minute.
sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so since AngelCon, so you know, there's a few really important things that we're pointing to that seemed like they had good legs and were going to happen. But at that time, it hadn't materialized yet. So one of them was winning a National Science Foundation Small Business Innovation Research Grant, just over $250,000, which is just a tremendous win. So we're now part of the Energy Technologies portfolio in what's called the America's Seed Fund. And I mean, it's a real accolade. It's a real accomplishment. And thankful that we hired a grant writer to help us with that. She's amazing, and it's going to help us with a phase 2 application early next year, where we'll be applying to $1 million second phase of that grant, and that's focused on commercialization. Whereas this current phase 1 is really focused heavily on research and development. So how do we accelerate the development of the energy modeling platform? So that happened. That was huge. As I mentioned, we didn't have the full team. So we didn't have a CTO building software yet. It was my business partner, Dr. Dan Howard. He had built this scientific computational model, and we could use it, but we didn't have software that we could sell and be able to actually deliver these impact analytics or this data at scale. And so since then, we've hired a CTO who is absolutely amazing. He's got over 10 years of experience with both business to business, what's called B2B, software as a service, or SaaS. The acronyms that there's many of them. But so we've got an amazing CTO, and I think the important piece with the software side is that back when Daniel was doing his PhD work, to produce this kind of data took years of time, hundreds of thousands of dollars, terabytes of data, teams of scientists. No wonder nobody's looking at this kind of data. Totally impractical. Fast forward to today, we just did a project for what might be the largest wind, solar, and storage project in Arizona. Well, it's in Arizona, it's largest in the country. And that took us about 6 weeks. And fast forward now, we're on track before the end of the year to be able to produce same-day results. Oof. So making this, this democratizing access to this data that shows how we can reduce pollution in our world. And so I'm just really excited about that. And then through AngelCon, I made an amazing connection with Dr. Paul Stoltz.
Oh, yeah.
He came up to me afterward and goes, "What's your phone number?" And I'm kind of going, "Okay, well, you got to meet somebody." And so that introduction led to just shy of a $20,000 sale, which was this big project out in Arizona, where the landowner was our customer. So they offered a lease of their land. They've got a humongous amount of land out in Flagstaff and surrounding county. And he needed a way to expand the narrative of what it was that they were a part of to help secure the additional 3 project permits. So I don't know exactly what that number looks like for him, but certainly, tens of millions of dollars in land leases over 30-year leases. So I mean, so he introduced us to 6 of the top 10 global utility scale developers, the utilities out there, the county. And one of the key learnings that we uncovered from that was that the county holds the keys to permits,
Mm,
to
yeah,
whether these
me too.
projects happens or not,
Yeah.
right? And it's worth millions of dollars to the county and, tens of millions to the landowner and billions to the project developers. And so what was key though is that regardless of the decision that they make, they're under fire. Some people hate it. I don't want these in my backyard. They look ugly. We should just continue burning all fossil fuels. It's the best way forward, or whatever it is. What about the local species impacts? And these are all, some of these are valid concerns. And so, or they make the decision and they need to, or they don't make the decision, then why aren't you doing it? We need more clean, affordable energy, et cetera, et cetera. So the permitting folks they're, I think, in the spot where they need to be able to justify and bring more confidence and transparency to their decisions for the citizens.
Yeah.
And so it's also a choke point for the developers who have a very big business deal at stake. So I'm going to be focusing on that and learn what we can from the permitting side of things, which I didn't realize before AngelCon.
Right.
In order to have that paying customer. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. Well, amazing outcomes. I mean, it is kind of cool. It's like kind of very varied, one outcome family was, like, can we really make this work? And doing a very objective analysis on the reality of the business model. And Alec, being able to launch beta and very soon the actual product and this additional investment is awesome. And lots of great outcomes for Andrew too. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being our best advertisers. But so any questions? Yes. I'm going to throw this at you. It's a mic. Ready? Well, actually, I could hand it over. It's actually fun to throw.
I don't look trustworthy. Is this an okay distance? Can you hear? Okay. I'm curious about the LLC that's formed that gets the equity. How do you determine the amount of equity that they get in the company?
Great question. So it's funny because investors each year they say, well, can we, pick our deal terms, and that's what we want, and request that from the companies. But every time we explain, well, every company's at a different stage of fundraising. They may have already raised a chunk, 100K from another investor. So you're going to be bound by those terms. There's very little negotiation that can happen there. These companies are very early stage, so they haven't typically done what's called a priced round, where a priced round is we determine the value of the company. It's like, okay, you're worth $10 million. We look at all the number of shares that have been issued to founders, to suppliers, vendors. Sometimes we use shares to contractors, and we divide 10 million by the number of shares. It gives us a share price, and that's going to be okay. So the next round of shares that we're selling here is going to be $1 per share, and that's a priced round. We have a specific dollar amount associated to each share, even though they're not on the public market, they're not on NASDAQ yet, but that's how we determine the value. And when it's very early stage, the value is just like, we don't know. We have no idea. So there's a range that everyone accepts at any given time, and there's trends in that range. So when you're in the first couple of years, the range is historically anywhere between 3 to 10 million. In the crazy days, I think it was about a year and a half ago, some of these valuations just went bonkers. It was just like, whoa, hang on. What are we talking about here? We're talking about a startup that's 12 months in. They've come back down in the last 6 months, which the investors are happy about, because it avoids that bubble effect. Like we had a giant internet bubble. The reason there was that bubble and it popped and everything crashed is because the valuations went crazy. So the moderation that is occurring right now in the startup valuation world is good. It's a good thing. These guys might argue against that, but it is a good thing. And the most typical, so I'm giving you a long answer. The typical vehicle that is used right now is called a SAFE agreement. and I actually forget what the acronym stands for.
Simple agreement for future equity.
Thank you. Simple agreement for future equity. And it's similar to convertible notes. So we're saying, okay, here's $100,000 I'm investing in you. And when you get to that price round, the 100,000 I put in is going to convert to those shares. So I'll get, but because I invested so early, I'm going to get a little bit of an advantage here. I'm going to get those shares at maybe at a discount of, they've negotiated a discount that says a 20% discount. So I'm going to get them at 80 cents a share instead of $1. So they'll get a few more shares. And that's to reward those investors for having made that early risky investment really early. So that's one way it can play out. So the investors get this safe agreement, so they don't hold any equity right there and then, but they have this document that promises that it will convert to stock. And typically that price round needs to occur in the next 24 months. That's kind of the expectation in the industry. Sometimes it takes a bit longer, and usually investors are willing to like, okay, you're 6 months out, it's okay, we'll wait another 6 months. So that's kind of big picture. I'm giving you kind of a big picture version of it. That's a great question.
Were you curious about the LLC or?
So the LLC will have, they'll enter into this agreement with the company. And it's the full 100K that gets invested. So it's not each individual investor that's investing, it's the LLC that's investing. Yeah, sorry, if there's a follow-up question.
Just the follow-up question being, who manages the LLC and who manages that as an investor? How is that organized?
Because the SBDC, we're not, so the fact that the SBA let us do this is a miracle. But they definitely don't want us managing funds. That would be, that would freak them out. So every year we pick a fund manager. So we ask one of the investors to step up and become the fund manager. We provide a ton of support. We connect them with accountants to file the accounting, the tax forms each year, and do the K1s. We help them. We tell them when to pay the franchise tax. And those are only two big responsibilities really each year until we get to that exit, One thing we do ask for, regardless of the term that they already have in place, maybe with other investors, so we align to those terms, we have to. We can't ask, the company to give us any special terms. We have to align with what current investors have. But we do ask for a board observer seat. So if they have a board, our fund manager gets to attend board meetings as an observer. So he doesn't get to vote, way too early to get voting rights as a board member. That happens at the price round. So the lead investor of the price round, they will typically get the right to have a voting board member on the board as part of the deal. We're too early. When it's very early stage, you don't get those rights. You just don't. But we do request observer rights, and then we request financial information. So on a quarterly basis, we ask the companies share financials when they start doing their financials on a regular basis. Let's see. So we're any last words of wisdom, you guys? We're gonna wrap up. And if there's anyone online who wants to ask a question, feel free to put something in the chat. But parting words of wisdom.
I was just going to say that I think the whole AngelCon experience is awesome because it helps to further the investor community locally, and it helps to educate and onboard new interested investors that have capacity to invest, but maybe don't know how to do it. Maybe they haven't done it before. They want to get more skilled to where they can both make informed investments and be more supportive to us founders. And then on our, on the entrepreneur side, it's just so cool to have this opportunity to go, from beginning to end through the process, way more prepared, from a pitch standpoint, have made wonderful connections. And so I'm sure that Alec and Emily would agree. It's a really well done experience, and it's a terrific asset to our community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. I swear I didn't pay him.
No, we pay you, but it's a really good deal.
Oh, Emily.
Jumping in, I think as an entrepreneur, it's like you aspire to be an investor one day. So I think just from looking in my investor lens, it seems like a really cool opportunity to not only do it yourself, but be surrounded by other people, either learning how to invest for the first time or people who have done it before. So you kind of learn the ins and outs of it. And from an entrepreneurial perspective, it's been such an amazing opportunity to have the support of the Central Coast community and just to have this opportunity to like not only pitch for a chance for money, but to make all these connections that I'm sure will go a really long way, no matter what you do.
Thank you.
Agreed with what everyone said. Even if you think you're early, you should just apply because whether you win or lose, it'll get you to where you want to go faster.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that, Alec. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, each and every one of you, for making the time this morning. It's especially you, Alec. I know. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. We appreciate it, and hopefully it's gave you a bit of a mind break with what's going on. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we do record all of our sessions. We do share the recordings. Well, they're on our website and they stay on there forever. So there's access to that. So AngelCon is coming up. Startup applications can start November 1st, but we're giving you a nice chunk of time to apply. But don't dilly-dally, but I know everyone will. People usually complete their application at midnight on January 12th. But get the word out, any startup out there. We're excited to see our new batch of applicants this year. And also very important, QuickBooks Intermediate. Any and all questions around QuickBooks. We have an awesome expert that teaches that class. You come in with your laptop, you can ask all your questions. Yeah, it's a complex. Well, QuickBooks can get pretty complex. So 1 to 4 October 26th. It's available online or in person. Yeah. And I think that's it from us. And we have that awesome QR code. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Good to see you all. Thank you for being here this morning.
Take care, Emily, Alec. Good to see you both.
Thank you. Great to see you both.
Bye, guys.
Take care.